Hey everyone, Dom here, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to take a look at some of the self-published fantasy titles that I'm looking forward to reading in 2022. So I've already set out my kind of reading goals for 2022, and I've also scheduled in a couple of buddy reads for the year as well. But one thing that I haven't really planned out is looking at self-published works this year. Last year I had some really great success with self-published and indie titles in fantasy, and I'm looking forward to continuing that in 2022. So what I thought I would do is go through not a top 10 list because it would be too difficult for me to try to rank these titles, but 10 fantasy titles that I'm looking forward to trying out this year. However, when I put together my list, I got way more than 10. So I've decided to add in the extra criteria of ratings. So all of these titles that I'm going to mention today have fewer than 100 ratings on Goodreads. Some of them are close, so by the time this video comes out, there's one or two that have a good chance of breaching that 100 ratings mark, but at the moment, as of the time of filming, they all have fewer than 100 ratings. So where I've not ranked these titles, what I'm literally going to do is just run through each of them quickly, give a little brief synopsis and a look at the cover, and I'm going to do this in order of the number of ratings they've got on Goodreads, starting with the title with the fewest ratings and leading up to the title with the most. With all that said though, let's get into the 10 self-published fantasy titles with fewer than 100 ratings on Goodreads that I'm lining up for this year. So first up we have the Hellborn King by Christopher G. Beckoning. This is one that I recently mentioned on my TBR tag video because it's one of the most recently added titles to my list. I recently picked up the ebook of this when it was made available for free for a couple of days, so that was great timing, and I've had a couple of friends who are reading this at the moment and really enjoying it, and that really helps to build my excitement for it. So in terms of the ratings for the Hellborn King, it currently sits at an average of 4.36 on Goodreads from 22 ratings, and there are only 11 reviews at the moment. So this is a really underrated title. Some of these, especially the ones with maybe the lower numbers, don't have time on their side because they are all relatively new releases, so it's not like they've been sitting around for a couple of years and no one's reading and rating them. Some of them literally have only had a few months to go, so they've not had the opportunity yet to build up a vast number of ratings. In this book though, we have a character called Damien Dreadfire, whose people have been massacred, presumably by the armies of Batanthia, so he puts together his own army to attack Batanthia in return. We also have a second side of the story which looks at the other side, and this is the Crown Prince of Batanthia, who's aiming to defend his people from Damien Dreadfire's invading horde. And as with many of these titles, I originally got wind of this through the strength of the cover and the author's presence on Twitter advertising the title, which then led to me taking a closer look at it and adding it to my list. Next up, with 25 ratings, 17 reviews and an average rating so far on Goodreads of 3.92, we have The Path and the Way by Michael S. Jackson. This is commonly referred to as Ringlander, which is the title of the series, because that's the predominant word on the cover itself. This is one of several titles in the list that are part of the SPFBO competition this year, the self-published fantasy blog-off run by Mark Lawrence, and The Path and the Way made it through to the semi-final stage of its respective team of reviewers. The synopsis here: holes between worlds are tearing through Rengus, firestorms are raging as multiple realities battle for control of the elements. Even the Way, the turbulent channel that separates Nord, Hatar and Kemen, the lifeblood of the city of Tyr, has turned. Kyra's search for her missing brother draws her away from the familiar frozen lines of Nord and south into the chaotic streets of Tyr, where games are played and battles are fought. As reality tears, she must choose between her family or her path before the worlds catch up with her. So this synopsis doesn't give a vast amount of detail into the storyline itself, and I quite like that because nobody likes to be spoiled when reading the back of a book or the online synopsis of the title. As with many self-published titles, one of the real draws of this book is the physical copy itself, where the author has different bundles, I guess, of offers available where you can purchase this book along with character cards, bookmarks, map of the world. So it's definitely worth checking out the author's website if you're looking to pick up this title, and where possible I'll leave links in the description box below so you can find all of these self-published works. Number 3 on the list, The Army of the Curse by Kareem Solomon. This one has an average rating of 4.64 presently on Goodreads from 33 ratings and 32 reviews. Like The Path and the Way, this is also a semi-finalist in this year's SPFBO competition. Everyone knew the Cursed were coming, nobody knew how to defeat them, and now the fate of Garania rests in the hands of a hapless trio. Princess Layla gives up her crown to join the Mages Guild, Princess Nardine looks for a weapon to defeat the Cursed, while a rebellion threatens to tear her kingdom apart, and the Northman Helgrim journeys to claim his birthright. Can the three unite and put aside their differences before it's too late? The entire human race is already on the brink of extinction. So again, a nice kind of vague, I have abbreviated it slightly, but a nice vague synopsis, and it gives a lot of room for the story itself to actually build around that, and I'm quite interested to see how those threads do tie in. It's one of many titles that has been optimistically likened to a Game of Thrones or A Song of Ice and Fire in the kind of synopsis, to say that there are several different kingdoms involved here, and this world has its own kind of Game of Thrones in play. With 38 ratings, 36 reviews and an average of 4.58 currently on Goodreads, book 4 on this list is Beckoning at the Gate by Benjamin J. Ryan. All Sanfa wants to do is escape from a life that has become her prison. When she finds a mysterious key, everything changes as a key is awakened and Sanfa is thrust into a world of fairies, princes and eldritch magic. While in the north a great power stirs, something ancient that could unravel the very threads of existence. This is another one which doesn't really tell me a vast amount in the synopsis, but some of the reviews that I've read which give a bit more detail, too much detail for me. I don't want to know every little aspect building up to this story, but some of those reviews definitely intrigue me as to the premise of this story, and it's one that I'm quite looking forward to having a look at. Next up we have one of the finalists from SPFBO 7, which is this year's competition, standing at the moment with 57 ratings, 44 reviews and an average rating of 4.25 on Goodreads. We have Burn Red Skies by Kirsten Espinosa Rosero. When the summoner's army blazes through her village, Dove is forced into hiding. Torn from everything she knows, she begins training in the elements with only one goal in mind: to find her brother. She just needs to get past the summoner's army, but how can she slay a dragon that is already dead? That's a pretty cool little ending line of the synopsis there. I'm really looking forward to this one. It's got a really funky cover. I do like this one. I like all of the covers, I think, actually on this list, maybe with one exception, but this one I think is a really cool design, and I'm hoping that the story itself is going to be a really cool and interesting one as well. Book 6 on my list is another semi-finalist from SPFBO 7 with an average rating of 4.22 from 58 ratings and 21 reviews. We have The Blood of a Spear by Mark Timoney. And this is one where from the synopsis I do have that typical fantasy reader's conundrum of how am I going to pronounce some of these place and character names. Starting off with Kyle, I'm not quite sure where I'm going to go with that, because when I read a book, after a few mentions, I do kind of settle into something that is generally comfortable to my reading eye. But when Kyle loses his chance to become part of the legendary demon hunters, joining the Bronze Guard mercenaries seems the logical alternative. It's an opportunity to put his training to use, and more importantly, as the company is currently in the employ of Prince Alessandra, it will allow him to keep an eye on his younger brother Darian, who's determined to follow his dream of becoming a Keralis magic user. But the broken continent of Athmay still bears the scars of a war between the summoners some 3,000 years ago, and an unexpected battle with a demon, a remnant of that ancient war, reveals the brothers' connection to a forbidden bloodline. Soon they find themselves on the run from the prince, demonic hordes, and a prophecy that could break the world anew. So plenty to go on with that 2-paragraph synopsis. It's another one that I'm looking forward to. The cover on this one's really interesting because you often will see in fantasy dragons, but this one is very much a kind of skeletal dragon, and it looks kind of weird with that gaping mouth that you can completely see through. It kind of threw me the first couple of times that I saw this, trying to kind of figure out the logistics of that jaw before I got my head around it. And now I think it just looks pretty cool the way it's all set out. Next up is one of my buddy read titles in February along with my friend Nina. This one currently has 65 ratings, 33 reviews and a 3.98 average rating on Goodreads. So Cold from the North by D.W. Ross. An army of invaders forces Olgulf Halsbane and his people to seek refuge. Olgulf is tasked with finding the one person who can put a stop to the onslaught, but doing so will send him across lands and seas, have him and his closest friend navigate the intricacies of civil war and try to win the help of a princess fighting for her throne. If he fails, darkness will prevail and the reign of the Onyxborn will begin. Onyxborn being the title of the series itself, and we've got book 2 of this one has just been released in the beautiful hardback that I already have a copy there of book 1 in, and I'm really looking forward to reading this one, hopefully really enjoying it, so I can pick up a copy of the second book and match the first one on my shelf. Book 3 I think has just been finished as well by D.W. Ross, so this will be one of those kind of rare for me completed self-published trilogies. I haven't had too many of those that I've come across so far. Most of them I tend to be finding just as they're in the early stages of the series, with just 1 or 2 titles currently available. Next up is one of the titles that I'm really looking forward to because the author seems to be really nice. I've interacted with her on Discord and Twitter and Instagram, and for me it really helps when you're able to interact with an author and they're really nice, they're really open to people talking to them. I love that about the kind of day and age that we're in at the moment, where we have the opportunity to do that online. Anyway, the title itself, this one is The Iron Crown by L.L. McRae, and it's sitting at the moment with an average rating of 4.29 on Goodreads from 69 ratings and 54 reviews. And this is the second of the titles on my list that is actually a finalist in the SPFBO competition this year. So this one, along with Burn Red Skies and I think it's 8 other titles, I think it's 10, is it maybe 8 that are in the final, I don't know. But either way, those 2 titles are going to be fighting out for the crown this year. Synopsis of this one: Fenn's first and only memory is finding himself in the middle of the forest, face to face with a dragon spirit mocking him, all knowledge gone apart from his own name. Lost and confused, his only hope for answers is Calidra, a woman living on the edge of the world with her partner. Forced to return home when her father dies, Calidra is put off facing her estranged mother for 7 years, and she begrudgingly helps Fenn, forging papers for him so he can avoid the Queen's Inquisitors. But her mother is the least of her worries when they discover an ancient enemy is rising again. It should be impossible with the Iron Crown in power, and Fenn is terrified he might unwittingly be playing a part in the war's resurgence. Surrounded by vengeful spirits and powerful magic, Fenn's desperate attempt to find his way home might well alter the fate of Tassar and every power in it. This one I am looking forward to, but before I get to the Iron Crown, I do have a copy of the, I think it's a novella, not a short story, the novella The Citrine Key, which will help me to get into the world of the dragon spirits and the writing style of L.L. McRae before I tackle the actual novel itself. Another author I've interacted with quite a bit, mostly on Instagram, is Tom Dumbrell, and his book The Look of a King is sitting at the moment on 96 ratings on Goodreads, 65 reviews and an average of 4.16. So this is another one that's been on my radar for quite a while, and I've decided that I'm finally going to get to it in the next couple of months. I've already picked up a copy and got it ready to go on my Kindle, so as soon as the opportunity arises, this is one of my priority titles. 2 young men, one with a dark past, the other with a bright future. Cyrus is a storyteller frustrated by the mundane trappings of village life, while Prince Augustus struggles to meet high expectations after an upbringing of royal privilege in the bustling capital. As both try to forge their own paths, a royal assassination unexpectedly closes the gap between them. The nation of East Haven is thrown into war with their oppressive neighbours, and so begins a conflict from which neither can walk away. Will a young prince finally measure up to his destiny? Will a storyteller create a legend of his own? Cyrus and Augustus's lives may seem worlds apart, but perhaps they aren't so different after all. So The Look of the King is probably the one title on this list where I'm not a fan of the cover. Plenty of people do like it though, it's just not to my particular tastes. But this one's quite a short title and one that I'm looking, as I say, to slot into my reading list in the next month or 2. And last title on this list, just under 100 ratings with 98, 67 reviews and an average of 4.18 is Winds of Strife by U.G. Gutman. This one's another self-published title that entered into the SPFBO blog off this year. Didn't make it to the semi-final stage, but it is a very closely fought competition, and I know several people who've read Winds of Strife and really highly rate it. Witch hunts have plagued the kingdom of Oyonnath for decades. Thousands were slain due to the king's paranoia of women who practice senspiritic magic. But Nye and his companions have seen enough of murder and misogyny. 15 years have passed since he joined the witch hunters, and now, at long last, an opportunity to destroy them from the inside reveals itself, an opportunity to overthrow the king and end his reign of cruelty. But 15 years of pretense have taken a toll. His hands are stained by the blood of countless innocents, his heart is scorched by grief, and his sanity hangs by a thread. Even if he can kill the king and see this revelation through, it may not suffice to purge the voices from his head. This one I've heard is a bit darker than maybe some of the other titles sound, but as I say, it's got some really good reviews from people who I know and whose tastes I've learnt to trust. So like all of the titles on this list, I'm really looking forward to finally get into this one and making my own mind up about it. So there we have 10 self-published fantasy titles, all with fewer than 100 ratings currently on Goodreads, and I'm looking forward to adding an additional rating and an additional review to each and every one of these. Let me know down in the comments below what your expectations are of these titles. If you've read any of them, what did you think of them? Which ones do you think I should start with first? With the exception of Cold from the North, I've not planned any of these in specifically as to when I'm going to read them, what order, or anything along that, although I do have a couple that I'm kind of more interested in reading sooner rather than later. As I said towards the top of the video, I will put down in the description box below as much as possible details of the authors, their website, so you can check these guys out in a bit more detail, check the books themselves out and the other titles that some of these authors have available as well. Again, I had a really great year with self-published fantasy last year, and I fully expect the same again this year, and you should definitely look to support the indie and self-published authors who are putting out these great works. So that's it from me anyway. As usual, like and subscribe if you've appreciated my content and you want to see more. Also in the description box down below you can find links to all of my social media pages, my Amazon wishlist and my Ko-fi page, where you can also find previews of what videos I've got coming up next and the occasional bit of behind the scenes info as well. I hope to catch you again in another video soon, but until then, as always, take care of yourselves, read some good books. Bye for now.